Good evening. Welcome to tonight's episode of your favorite family law conversation show, Late Night Intercourse with Chioma. And I'm excited that tonight we are not only coming live to you on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, sorry, that's X, we're also coming live to you tonight on Instagram. Yes. So, yay. So I'm happy that I have my Instagram family tonight to join us live and participate in the enlightenment that happens on every episode of the Late Night Intercourse with Chioma. Of course, your host, as usual, is Chioma Onyenucheya Uko, the Zest family lawyer. So tonight, we're diving straight to a conversation on domestic violence. As many of you already know, every 25th November to the 10th of December each year, the world observes 16 days of activism against all forms of violence against women and girls. That is to say that every violent action or inaction, anything that constitutes violence, there is concerted advocacy, concerted activism world over to eradicate, to eliminate, to ensure that we end and stamp out all forms of violence against women and girls. And in commemoration of this annual observance, I want us to tonight discuss domestic violence. Of course, that's not the only form of violence that can be perpetrated against women and girls, but the reason I would like for us to talk about it is because it is a violence that I think is a lot more abominable, if there's any such thing. Of course, violence in any form, in any strata, wherever it happens, is abominable. But the home, the domestic spaces, are supposed to be places of comfort, places of warmth, of security. The place where you can freely exhibit your vulnerabilities and not feel judged and feel safe. Yet, we find that a lot of people suffer violence even in the home. A lot of people suffer violence in their domestic relationships. A lot of people are unable to enjoy safety in that place where they're supposed to be safe. So tonight, the topic we're discussing is understanding domestic violence. Why is this conversation necessary? I found out that oftentimes the people who perpetrate violence may not fully understand that the actions or inactions which are violent are actually so. Sometimes these things stem from a sense of that's how it's done. It's maybe they think it's a macho thing to exhibit might, even when they exhibit might wickedly, even when they exhibit might in a manner that threatens, the weaker people within their space. Some people think it shows strength. Sadly, that is not the case. So I'll need for us to understand domestic violence, particularly because in committing domestic violence, you are exposing yourself to liability against the state. But of course, I'll get into all of that in due course. So what exactly is this domestic violence that we talk about? Domestic violence simply is any behavior, any action, any inaction, anything done or deliberately undone which exposes another person to humiliation, to threat, to some sort of subjugation, to injury, to anything that reduces or dehumanizes their person. That thing will be domestic violence if it happens within the home, within domestic spaces. It becomes domestic violence. And of course, it can manifest in different forms. And then I have people sometimes ask the question, so, no, what he did or what she did was abuse. It wasn't violence. Well, domestic violence is one and the same thing as domestic abuse. They can both be used interchangeably. You can, if the action falls within the acts that can be classified as domestic violence, they are domestic abuse. So anything that is abusive, anything that subjugates, anything that unduly seeks to wield control over another is both domestic violence and or domestic abuse. The terms can be used interchangeably. However you use it, we're talking about the same thing. And then you have people who actually think that anytime we mention domestic violence or we mention domestic abuse, we must be talking about hitting someone, banging someone's head against the wall, some sort of physical violence. It has to be physical before it becomes domestic violence. Well, no, sorry, that's not quite correct. Domestic violence can manifest in any form. It can be physical, emotional, verbal, psychological, economical, and even sexual. So what that means is that if that action or inaction, whether done physically, verbally, sexually, emotionally, psychologically, or even economically, however it is done, if it is done within domestic relationships, it is domestic violence. And some of those actions, I've tried to give you examples. When we talk about physical violence or physical abuse, whichever you want to ascribe it as, it will include those things like maybe hitting someone, slapping someone, slamming their head against the wall, shoving them roughly aside and things like that. If it manifests physically, it is a physical violence. But there are other forms of the violence that are as fertile sometimes as physical violence. Another will be something like sexual violence. Sexual violence will be that form of violence that attacks the sexuality of the victim. It may be in the form of a rape. And by the way, while we do not have a clear pronouncement of the law that prohibits spousal rape, by the provisions of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, I think that spousal rape is a thing. So any form of violence that is sexual in nature, whether as spousal rape, as incest, or something like pedophilia, taking advantage of younger children, molesting them sexually, sexual harassment, fondling and grabbing of body parts, without consent, any of those things can constitute sexual violence. And unfortunately, we have a rising case or rising incidence of children who are so abused in the homes, whether as children of a family or as younger members of a family, who are sometimes called house helps or distant relations. So long as a person is not up to 18 years of age, in fact, sometimes you find those domestic relationships not quite within the home, but of course within domestic relationships, in the sense that you may find relationships between a man and a woman, or where a man takes advantage of a girl, maybe because they are neighbors or because they have some sort of relationship with that family and things like that. It doesn't matter that it didn't happen in the home of the victim or in the home of the perpetrator. The relationship that exists between the parties also constitutes it within domestic violence. So I've mentioned examples of sexual violence. Then, of course, we have verbal violence, verbal abuse. It can be in the form of nagging. Yes, I'm sure that many of you thought violence has to be, physical or of such, active impact before it can be called violence. Well, even verbal abuse is active because it tears down the dignity of the person, because it attacks the person's sense of confidence, because it puts that person in fear, in trepidation, in doubt of him or herself. Those things are violent acts. So any form of action that is violent but verbal will constitute verbal abuse. Of course, including things like name calling and all of those. Then we have psychological violence or psychological abuse. It will include things like, maybe gaslighting. Yes, many of us have heard about narcissists and all of those. Some of those people who can project their insecurities on you, and then you begin to doubt your sanity. You begin to doubt, you begin to gradually lose sense of self. They will attack your confidence. They will call you names that just bring you to a place where you lose your self-esteem. Those people who will tell you things that are so despicable that you would wonder if you are worth remaining alive. Those are psychological abuses. Any abuse that attacks your psyche, that attacks the victim's self-worth, that attacks the victim's sense of sanity is psychological abuse. And then I had mentioned economical abuse. Yes, there is such a thing, and the law prohibits it alongside other forms of abuse that I've mentioned. And easy examples I can think of include things like forced economic dependence, where you have perpetrators trying to unduly control their victims by ensuring that the victim do not have any access or control over funds, over finances, including the finances that they toil for. There are homes or relationships where you find that after a person has gone to toil, has gone to work, when they return from work, they are not allowed to even take out money from their earnings to, take care of themselves. They retire everything to someone who totally controls their finances. Sometimes they are not even allowed the choice to, make a living for themselves. Every kobo they spend must be authorized and released by another, though they are adults and have the means and willingness to earn. That's forced economic dependence, and other such economic abuse. Stealing from that person and not allowing them enjoy the fruit of their, or the proceeds of their labor, and all of those. And honestly, any of these forms of violence is prohibited by the law and punishable. Yes, unfortunately, we find that most times people think that domestic violence is just a family matter. It's a private family matter that can be resolved between parties. It's something that we should encourage them to just go home and settle. Yes, it's okay to encourage people to settle when there is a dispute. It's okay. It's very okay. It helps to encourage harmonious living. But domestic violence is a crime, not just an offense against the victim. It is a crime against the state. So when you commit domestic violence, you have not only offended that victim, you have offended the laws of the land. You have offended the state. And when a person has committed domestic violence against you, any act of violence against you, regardless your relationship with that person, whether that person is your father, your mother, your husband, your wife, your uncle, your sister, whosoever he or she may be, that person did not just commit an offense against you. That person has committed a heinous offense actually against the state. Because anything that threatens your safety, your life, threatens the wholesomeness of the state. So, and the primary duty of the state is to protect, preserve lives and property. So the state owes a duty to protect and preserve your life, of course, including your property. So when somebody attacks that person is in direct conflict with the state. And it's not just an offense against you, but a crime against the state, punishable by sanctions prescribed by law. So, as I have said, domestic violence is a crime. It is not just a private domestic affair. And anybody can be a victim of domestic violence. Unfortunately, when we talk about domestic violence, you find a lot of people, particularly, my apologies, the men, thinking that, the women make noise about these things. A woman should be submissive. A woman should do this and that. If a woman is quiet and submits, nobody will beat her. After all, the man is the head of the home and blah, blah, blah. Well, the reality is that domestic violence and other forms of violence mostly derive from a sense of impunity across power dynamics. You find that those who have the power, those who feel that they can do anything and get away with it, would usually be the ones abusing another. They would usually be the ones inflicting violence against another. So, for example, where a man feels that he has the might to beat a woman, instead of dialoguing with her, instead of discussing with her, instead of reasoning with her, he may beat, he may shove, he may kick, he may slap. In the same way, you may find that a woman, because she feels she has power of the tongue, because she feels she can talk and say whatever comes to mind, she may tear down a man's self-esteem by her verbal abuse, vice versa. So, when we speak against domestic violence, we speak against anything that threatens any member of the society, regardless the agenda. But the reality is that, though anybody can be a victim of domestic violence, most of the victims are women and children. And of course, other vulnerable members of the family. Sometimes you find the sick, those who are very sick, are usually victims of domestic violence. Or the elderly. You find that in some homes, people treat the elderly however they choose. They assault them, they harass them, they treat them in less than dignified manner. All of these are domestic violence. I've heard stories of children who will forcefully take, monies from their aged parents, maybe draw from their, maybe draw from their pension accounts and all of those, just because they know that their aged parents cannot stand up against them. And they do not realize that if the long arms of the law catches up with them, they'll go in for it. Because like I said earlier, domestic violence is not just a crime or offense against the victim. It is actually an offense, a crime against the state. So, because I don't like for our conversations to be long, so that I'm able to, hold your attention for the duration, I would like to summarize quickly. And then, because every episode is truly an intercourse, it's not just about me talking to you. It's about me talking to you and then listening and reading from you, such that if you have questions, I'll gladly answer them. And then if you have opinions or thoughts that you would like to share, of course, they're most welcome. And I'll react to those that need my reaction. So conclusively, before I then listen to you, domestic violence can be fatal. It can be deadly. Statistics abound of people who have died due to domestic violence. Let us avoid it. Let us prevent it. Let us condemn it. Let us speak up against it. In line with the theme of the 2023 observance of the 16 days of activism against violence against women and girls, let us unite and prevent domestic violence, and prevent violence against women and girls. But of course, let's prevent all forms of violence, particularly violence within the home. So, this is where I would like to call it a wrap, and then pay attention to see what questions you may have for me and what comments you would like for us to share thoughts on. So I'm checking on our platforms now to see if there are questions. And as usually happens on every episode of the Late Night Intercourse, there is always, and will also be tonight, data subscription prizes to be won by those who correctly answer my question. Of course, as usual, fastest fingers. So, let's see if there are questions. Data subscription prizes. My apologies. I'm looking to see if I have questions here. Okay, I'm seeing compliments. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Torrenti Kaza, one of my favorite persons. Thank you so much. Thank you. And to all of you watching, joining, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm checking to see if there are questions. All I saw on Facebook are compliments. Let me check. Let me check. Let's take it one at a time. Let me check. I hope I'm not missing anybody's comment or question. Let me check. Oh, thank you, Leo Smart. Leo Smart says congratulations for going live on X2. Thank you, Leo Smart. Oh, he says he's learned a lot now. That's a beautiful topic. Awesome. Okay, let's see what comments we have on YouTube, Eve Ernie. Any comments on YouTube or maybe questions, Eve Ernie? Let's check and see. I'm finding it difficult turning on. I can't see anything on YouTube. I don't know what's happening from this device. Okay, let's check Instagram. Whoa. Whoa. Let's see if there are questions or comments. This network is acting up. I'm unable to. I don't know why I'm unable to. Okay, well, I can't find, and I can't read from here. I can't read from here. So I don't know what else to do. I can only see Facebook clearly. I can't read from here. Okay, my bad, my apologies. Tonight is our first time coming live on Instagram, so I'm sure that before the next episode, we'll sort out how I can quickly go through your messages, your comments, your questions, whichever they are, and respond in real time. My apologies. So we go back to Facebook, and since I can't find a question, all I saw were compliments. Since I can't find a question, I think I might as well just go ahead with asking my own question. Thank you, Ital. He says, great job. Thank you very much. Since I can't find questions, I guess I'll ask mine. Okay, so if you listen to my brief presentation on the topic understanding domestic violence, I'd like for you to give me 2 examples each of 3 forms of domestic violence. I gave you 6 forms of domestic violence. Mention any 2 that you heard me mention, and then mention any 3 that you heard me mention, and give me 2 examples of each of the 3 you heard me mention. Just so you assure me that you truly listened and you're taking something away from this class tonight. So while I wait to hear or to read your responses, this conversation on domestic violence will come in parts. All I have done tonight is to just give you like a glimpse into what domestic violence is. In subsequent episodes, I will clearly teach you what laws prohibit domestic violence, what laws protect you from domestic violence, and how you can get protection in the event of domestic violence. One of the reasons why domestic violence continue to thrive is because oftentimes victims don't talk. They are not sure that they can get justice from the courts. They are not sure that they can get protection from the law. They are not sure what measures, what mechanisms are in place to protect them. So victims would mostly just cry in private and remain in the places of abuse. In subsequent episodes, I will tell you, I will teach you, I will expose to you what laws protect you from any form of domestic violence. So tonight, I'm waiting to read your response. Torrentikaza has sent in his response to the question. So he mentioned, he says the forms of domestic abuse, the 3 he's given me, he said verbal abuse, and he says beating a person. So that means he has given me only 1 example of verbal abuse instead of the 2 examples I asked for. He mentioned psychological abuse. He didn't give me an example of psychological abuse. I know I gave some examples. He has mentioned economical abuse, and he also gave me 1 example instead of 2. He mentioned stealing money from elderly ones. All he has said is correct, but not correct enough to satisfy what I asked for. I said, give me 3 examples of the forms of domestic violence I mentioned. Yes, he has given me 3 forms, but give me 2 examples of each of the 3 you have chosen to mention. He has given me only 1 example of 2. He didn't give me any example of the 3rd he chose. So because of that, he has not qualified to win our star prize. So Leo Smart says physical abuse, and the example he gives is beating or kicking a partner. Awesome. He says emotional abuse. He now says using words that can damage someone's emotions and emotional life. So he has given me only 1 example there. So he talks about sexual abuse, and he says forcing yourself on your partner or someone without his consent. That's 1. Or forcing yourself on someone below 18 years. Yes, and he gives the example of maids or house helps. Fantastic. So, Leo Smart, your responses are correct, but you are 1 example short. Yes, you gave me 3 forms of violence out of the 6 I mentioned to you, which satisfies what I've asked, but you gave me 2 examples of 2 and 1 example of 1. I want you to give me 2 examples of each of the 3 you have chosen. So that way, I am satisfied that I didn't just waste my time tonight, that in creating time for this enlightenment, that you understand what I'm saying and I am truly impacting our society. So this is me investing to prevent violence. So I'm waiting for who will be my star prize winner. For Torrentikaza and Leo Smart, you've both won consolation prizes of 2,000 Naira data subscription each. I await a star prize winner who, of course, will take a 5,000 Naira data subscription for being the star prize winner of tonight's episode. And in another minute, we'll wrap up this episode. So who's going to be my star prize winner? I wish I could read reactions on Instagram. I feel really bad. Okay, from here, I can see that your favorite midwife. Hey, darling, how are you? She says, congrats. You are finally live on Instagram. Oh, I'm happy you like that. Thank you so much, darling. Thank you. Okay, Zuru also joined. My bestie's here. Adu Deji, she sent a request. Okay, how do I do that? Oh, my bad. Okay. I'm going to ensure I'm able to do that before the next episode so that when I come live next episode, I'll be able to oblige whatever request is sent. Yes, my apologies, I'm unable to do that. I wish I could. Oh, Anthony Ekmete sends in his response on Facebook and he says, verbal, for verbal abuse, he gives the example of nagging and name calling. Awesome, those are two correct examples. He mentions economic and he speaks of forced economic dependence, yes, and then stealing from the person. Awesome, those are correct two examples. Then on psychological, he talks about gaslighting and attacking the person's self-worth. Fantastic. So our star prize winner for tonight's episode is Anthony Ekbete, and this has earned him a 5,000 Naira data subscription. Yo, give it up for Anthony Ekbete. Thank you very much, Anthony. Your responses are correct and satisfy what I require. Thank you very much. And I don't like that most of my winners per episode are men. So please, women, where are you? Many of you join me live. I see you. I see you. Many of you join me live. Hi, Graceful. How are you? Good evening, my dear. Many of you join me live, but you only just, I guess, learn, and you don't bother with participating and winning. Come on. This is an intercourse. You and I. Participate to the full. Come on. Come on. These prizes are a gift from me to you. With love. Please don't treat it, don't despise it. Okay? Participate. I want to see more women win during the prize segment. So I think this would be a good place to call it a wrap tonight. Thank you to everyone who participated in tonight's episode of the Late Night Intercourse with Chioma. Of course, as always, your host is Chioma Onyenucheya Uko, the Zest family lawyer. Looking forward to seeing you next week, Thursday, same time at 10 p.m. for another enlightening episode. And like I said, it will be a continuation where I teach you the laws that protect you and how you can gain full protection from all forms of domestic violence. Do enjoy your night. A pleasant night rest. Bye-bye. ò sí ọ̀tá ihe ọbụla